There is a small island off the coast of China that has its own government, its own military, its own elections, and its own currency. It trades with dozens of countries. It manufactures chips that power most of the world's electronics. By almost every practical measure, it functions as an independent state. And yet, almost no country on Earth officially recognizes it as one. This isn't an accident. It's not an oversight. It is the result of a frozen conflict that began over 70 years ago, a war that stopped without a peace treaty, a standoff that never resolved, and a question that every major power has quietly agreed not to answer. This is why Taiwan is still unresolved. To understand Taiwan today, you have to go back to China in the 1940s. China had been torn apart for decades by foreign invasion, by internal collapse, by war with Japan. When World War II ended in 1945, the two dominant forces inside China went back to fighting each other. On one side was the Chinese Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong. On the other was the nationalist government, the Republic of China, led by Chiang Kai-shek. This civil war had actually been going on, in various forms, since the 1920s, but after 1945, it became a total struggle for control of the country. By 1949, the communists had won. Mao's forces swept across the mainland. Chiang Kai-shek and what remained of the nationalist government, along with roughly 2 million soldiers, officials, and civilians, retreated to the island of Taiwan, about 180 kilometers off China's southeastern coast. Mao proclaimed the People's Republic of China on the mainland. Chiang kept calling his government the Republic of China, and insisted it was the legitimate government of all of China, just temporarily displaced. Neither side accepted the other's legitimacy. Neither side signed a peace treaty. The Civil War didn't end, it paused, and that pause is still happening now. For years, the Republic of China government in Taiwan genuinely believed it would retake the mainland. That was the official position, the plan, the entire political identity of the nationalist government in exile. It never happened, but the legal and diplomatic fiction that both governments created, each claiming to be the real China, became the foundation of one of the strangest political situations in modern history. For the first 2 decades, the West backed Taiwan. The United States recognized the Republic of China as the legitimate government of China. Taiwan held China's seat on the United Nations Security Council. It was, on paper, one of the most powerful states in the world, representing the world's most populous nation while actually governing a single island. That was always unsustainable. The turning point came in the early 1970s. The Nixon administration, looking for a strategic counterweight to the Soviet Union, decided it needed a relationship with the People's Republic of China, the actual government sitting on the actual Chinese mainland, ruling over hundreds of millions of people. In 1971, the United Nations voted to transfer China's seat from Taipei to Beijing. Taiwan lost its place at the table almost overnight. Then in 1972, Nixon flew to China. He met with Mao. It was one of the most dramatic diplomatic reversals of the Cold War. The United States didn't formally recognize the People's Republic until 1979, under President Carter. When it did, it severed official diplomatic ties with Taiwan. Nearly every other country followed the same logic. One by one, they switched recognition from Taipei to Beijing. Today, only a handful of small nations still formally recognize Taiwan as a sovereign state. But here is the crucial detail. The United States did not simply abandon Taiwan. It passed the Taiwan Relations Act in 1979, which committed the U.S. to selling Taiwan defensive weapons and stated that any forceful attempt to change Taiwan's status would be considered a serious concern. It stopped just short of promising to defend Taiwan militarily. Deliberately, that ambiguity was intentional. It kept Beijing uncertain about how far it could push. It kept Taipei from feeling so secure that it might formally declare independence. And it locked everyone into a situation where the rules were never quite clear. That calculated vagueness has defined the Taiwan situation ever since. What emerged from all of this was a three-way standoff, and each side has its own position that it cannot easily abandon. Beijing's position is unambiguous on the surface. Taiwan is a province of China. It has always been part of China. Reunification is not a question of if, it's a question of when and how. The Chinese constitution explicitly states that reunifying Taiwan is a national obligation. Beijing has passed laws giving itself legal cover to use force if Taiwan ever moves toward formal independence. This is not just rhetoric. It is embedded in Chinese law and Chinese political identity. For the Communist Party, Taiwan is unfinished business from a civil war it won. Taiwan's position is more complicated, and it has shifted over the decades. The old nationalist dream of retaking the mainland is essentially gone. What replaced it is something more pragmatic, the status quo. Taiwan today has a fully functioning democracy. It has held free elections since the 1990s. Public opinion there has shifted significantly. Most people in Taiwan identify primarily as Taiwanese, not Chinese. Formal independence remains dangerous to declare because Beijing has been explicit about what that would trigger. So Taiwan exists in a kind of deliberate legal ambiguity, functioning as a state while avoiding the word. And the United States sits in its own contradiction. It officially acknowledges Beijing's position that there is one China. It does not officially recognize Taiwan as a country, but it sells Taiwan weapons, maintains unofficial relations through the American Institute in Taiwan, and has made clear, in increasingly direct terms in recent years, that it would be deeply concerned by any forceful change. What exactly the U.S. would do in the event of a Chinese military move on Taiwan remains, officially, unclear. That is by design, but it is also genuinely uncertain, and both Taipei and Beijing know it. Meanwhile, Taiwan has become economically and strategically more important than ever. The Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company produces the most advanced chips in the world. Global supply chains run through it. The island sits at a critical point in the Pacific, in the middle of what military strategists call the first island chain, a geographic barrier that matters enormously to both U.S. and Chinese naval strategy. The stakes have only risen. The obvious question is, why hasn't this been settled? The honest answer is that settling it would require someone to lose something they consider fundamental, and no one is willing to do that. Beijing cannot accept Taiwan's independence without appearing to abandon a core national commitment. It has staked too much political legitimacy on reunification as a historical destiny. Taiwan cannot accept reunification on Beijing's terms without surrendering a democracy and a way of life that most of its people want to preserve. The model Beijing proposed, one country, two systems, lost most of its appeal after the world watched what happened to Hong Kong. The United States cannot simply walk away without signaling that its security commitments across the Pacific are meaningless. But it also cannot give Taiwan an unconditional defense guarantee without risking a direct military confrontation with a nuclear-armed China. So the situation persists, not because anyone designed it to be permanent, but because every available resolution requires someone to pay a price they refuse to pay. And the longer it goes on, the harder it gets. Taiwan's democratic identity has deepened. China's military has grown dramatically more capable. U.S.-China relations have deteriorated. The window for a quiet, negotiated outcome seems narrower than it has ever been. Taiwan is not just an island with a complicated passport situation. It is the unfinished chapter of a civil war, suspended by Cold War politics, preserved by strategic ambiguity, and now caught between the ambitions of a rising power and the interests of an existing one. For 7 decades, the world has managed this question by refusing to fully answer it. That worked, mostly, but managing a frozen conflict is not the same as resolving it, and frozen conflicts have a tendency, eventually, to thaw. Whatever happens next in the Taiwan Strait will not just affect the island or China or the United States. It will shape what kind of world order emerges in the 21st century, who makes the rules, and whether borders can still be changed by force. That is why this question matters, and that is why it remains, after all this time, unresolved.